won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on TV and radio with the stories that really matter across the country. As Russia closes in on Kyiv and fuel prices are poised to rise again here on Monday, I'll be joined by a panel of top experts to discuss the latest in Ukraine and that energy crisis here in the UK. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news. Here's Ray Addison.
Thanks, Alistair. It's midday. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, as it would be World War III. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help deter Russian aggression. The troops flew out of Fort Stewart in Georgia to join thousands of others in the region.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
President Biden. President Zelensky has demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. It comes after Ukrainian authorities released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting him. GB News cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the southeastern city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. President Zelensky says Russia has violated international law. Moscow has not commented on the video.
Today in Melitopol, the invaders captured the mayor of the city, a mayor who courageously defends Ukraine and the people of his community. Obviously, this is a sign of the weakness of the invaders. They did not find any support on our land, although they counted on it. Now, the Russian forces have switched to a new stage of terror when they are trying to physically eliminate representatives of the legitimate local Ukrainian authorities.
President Zelensky there. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicines there today. Health Secretary Sajid Javid told GB News that the UK is sending medical equipment to Ukraine.
We've been working very hard with our Ukrainian friends ever since the start of the conflict on humanitarian aid. So far, in terms of medical support, we've sent out 6 flights from the UK full of medical supplies and equipment and vital medicines and wound packages. We're coordinating also with our European friends to make sure that together we can provide everything that is needed.
Sajid Javid there. Meanwhile, the President of France has criticised the UK government's response to helping Ukrainian refugees. Emmanuel Macron said he expected better of Britain's visa policy, which requires applicants to apply in person in Brussels or Paris. In response, the Home Office said it was bringing in measures to make the process quicker by allowing people to apply online. However, speaking on the Polish-Ukrainian border, one city mayor told GB News he had seen little support from the British government.
I do not know what the UK is doing. I'm here 15th day. I'm here 16 hours per day. We are tired. There is 1.5 million refugees that have already arrived in Poland. Some estimates predict that it may be a further 6 or 7, reaching up to 8 million people. Poland will not be able to cope with that number. So yes, we do need support. We do need help, and the UK should be one of those countries helping us.
Well, meanwhile, here in the UK, new research from the TU says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April. However, average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain families were under and said it's introducing a £21 billion package of support. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Ray, thanks very much indeed. Coming up this afternoon on Alastair Stewart and friends, President Biden's addressed the American people, insisting that the United States will not go to war with Russia in Ukraine. However, he reaffirms that any confrontation with NATO allies by President Putin would lead to World War III. 17 days into the invasion, I'll be breaking down where we are and explore what could happen next. We'll also be crossing over to the Polish border to see what it's like on the ground for Ukrainians fleeing their homeland. This comes as closer to home. The Home Office has been accused of being too slow, sinking into chaos, or even being hard-hearted when it comes to taking in refugees. Even Macron having a pop there, as you heard in the news. Plus, we'll have good causes this afternoon. An old friend of mine, Matt Millen's, doing his bit to help those in need in Ukraine using his horse boxes. And as always, I want to hear from you. Email me at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So today I'm looking at the crisis in Ukraine. At 1 o'clock, we'll be looking at the energy crisis here at home. On Ukraine, I have a growing fear that we are deluding ourselves, thinking that Russia might be defeated by Ukraine, the might of a superpower pitted against trench warfare. Russia heard President Biden say again he won't risk World War III. The United States will not be riding to the rescue. And Moldova, we read this morning, is getting ready to be next. On sanctions, several of the oligarchs have got their assets out. The EU says it'll take 5 years to wean itself off Russian energy, which is still being traded here on the London commodities market. We'll talk the talk, of course, but I really wonder if on Walking the Walk, Ukraine has already seen the best that we have to offer. Yesterday, Russia's bogged down and battered column of tanks and troop carriers began to disperse, not go away, but spread out, poised for a final push on Kyiv. Moscow told the Security Council of the United Nations Ukraine had 30 or so chemical weapons plants. The UN, NATO and its allies said it didn't. But the marker was put down amid fears that Russia will use their claim for a preemptive chemical attack on Ukraine. Boris Johnson said the response would be robust. The no-fly zone row rolls on. Ukraine still wants it. Poland and others are prepared to help. NATO, and especially the United States, continue to veto it. Against all of that and the horrors being experienced by the folk of Ukraine, that energy crisis here at home gets worse by the hour. I had a call yesterday from my local petrol station warning me of a 15% price hike on Monday. Gas prices continue to surge, worsened by the growing boycott of Russian output and, of course, growth in demand as the world recovers from the pandemic. And with a sombre nod back to Ukraine, one of the world's great bread baskets, grain prices have soared by 50% in the last fortnight. That'll push up the price not only of bread, but lots of other staple foodstuffs. Boris Johnson will try to talk to Saudi Arabia next week to get them to boost output. He'll hope to do better than President Biden. They wouldn't even take his calls. Well, today we're going to look at Ukraine and that energy crisis with experts on both. We'll also be on the Polish-Ukrainian border and in Romania, and we're joined by a couple separated by the war but now reunited. And that old friend of mine loading up his horse lorry with stuff that refugees need and hoping to drive it back with refugees on board. Your thoughts and questions always welcome. GBViews at gbnews.uk, Twitter, Facebook and all of our social media outlets. So, to get that first conversation going, I'm delighted to be joined here live in the studio by Damien Green, former Deputy Prime Minister, Home Office Minister and Immigration Minister, an old friend of mine, co-founder of Industrio, Rory McCallion, and former RAF officer there on the right of your screen, Andrew Brooks. Welcome to all of you. Sorry about that rather pessimistic lead-in, and tear holes in it if you want to. But the Russian convoy has dispersed. The fighting is spreading. Your assessment this morning, this afternoon?
I mean, broadly speaking, I think your pessimistic outlook, as you say, is probably realistic. It's hard to imagine, however heroically they're fighting, and they are, that Ukraine, if the Russians are determined to carry on barbarically shelling, bombing hospitals, mosques, we've heard this morning, doing their old playbook they used in Syria and Chechnya, then in the end they will prevail militarily. But it will be, I think that the 2 points I would make is, first of all, that we all know that fighting in urban areas is extremely difficult for the attacker. And if the Ukrainians heroically carry on trying to fight street by street in Kiev, then it's going to be long and bloody. And of course, the longer it goes on, the more the Russian economy craters, and therefore the more pressure there is on Putin from inside his own machinery.
Hold that thought for a moment, because I want to come back to you. But first of all, from the Royal Air Force experience that you have, without a no-fly zone, and that clearly is not a runner, what Damien's just described is absolutely spot on.
It is. I mean, years ago I wrote the history of the air war over Russia in the Second World War. They're just repeating what they know and love, which is to crush the opposition. It doesn't matter if you lose your own folk. It doesn't matter if you write off this sort of thing. Always remember the Russians really go for it in spades when they want to. They're not.
And to be crystal clear to folk at home, that threat of Biden's, it would mean the Third World War. He means it, and it's true.
It is true. It is true. I mean, talk about the no-fly zone for a minute, Alistair. If it operates, then the airplanes will have to leave, say, a Polish base to operate next door. Now, the Poles won't even give them MiG-29s for fear of being bombed. They want the Americans to launch them from Ramstein because they're terrified that they will be picked on should they be the base that launches the no-fly zone.
Yeah. Let me bring Rory in at that point, and remember what Damien just said about the economy. And that's your area of expertise. You write about industry, you write about businesses here, but you've got an eye for it globally. There are a lot of people who say the only optimism is that actually having Russia by the whatsits economically, sanctions on the oligarchs, cutting them out of international capital markets, that will actually have a lot more impact than any struggling that's going on in the airs or any struggling that's going on the ground.
Well, I don't think you can separate them, to be honest. And I think that you should distinguish between what, to be honest, I would describe as window dressing, virtue signalling, and what is actually having an impact. What has an impact is sanctioning the banks and sanctioning the trade in physical assets. If you sequester a yacht that is in dry dock in Germany, what difference does that make to the Kremlin and to the policymakers in the Kremlin? The answer is virtually none. But if you stop trade in the precious metals, or sorry, not necessarily precious metals, but essential metals like aluminium, like nickel, like copper, you will be hurting yourself, but you will also be hurting Russia, and you will be hurting its economy very significantly. We've seen a dramatic fall in the value of the ruble. That is reflecting what has happened in terms of the sanctions already. That is the area to continue squeezing. The number of oligarchs who have been sanctioned has become a bit of a
well, half of them got their stuff out.
Yeah, they got it. They've already got it out. But we've done more than you. It's not really a huge impact, in my opinion. Damien might disagree.
Well, let's ask him in a moment, but I'll tell you what I picked up. This is not today's newspaper, this is yesterday's. Russia at risk of defaulting on its debts within days.
Yes. Well,
that slams the economic door absolutely shut.
It does, but of course we've seen it before with Russia. We saw it in when the Bolsheviks took over, that they defaulted on their debts. They rebuilt their economy at great loss of life, of human life, and great sacrifice, but they did rebuild it. That's not the end for the Russian economy. It would be damaging, but it wouldn't ultimately be the end.
On that?
I mean, that's all true, of course. It's slightly different now in that you do have a Russian middle class that is used to, if you like, Western standards of living, and that's been ripped away from them. And I know, I reading newspapers as well, a lot of them are getting out. You know, Russia is losing its brightest and best in all fields. If they can get out, they will, which has a long-term effect. But I think in the short term, people in Russia can be made unhappier faster by being decoupled from the world economy than they would have been after.
Although for them to find a democratic vehicle to express that is a bit tricky.
Sure.
Let me take you back to the tactical strategic stuff, Andrew. You were heavily engaged in the theory and practice of nuclear war when you were in the Royal Air Force, and I'm assuming know a wee bit about chemical weapons as well. Those scenes at the UN yesterday were laughable if they weren't more horrendous, which they clearly are. Do you fear, as you sit here this afternoon, that Russia will use chemical weapons, whether it's as a false flag operation, oh, we found them all over the place, or do you think he will listen to Johnson and others saying, robust response?
I don't think it will on chemical. I think it will on nuclear. I'm an old nuclear man. And the deaths are horrendous. I don't think even a madman would entertain that. But chemical, he's used them. That's the trouble. He has used them. And there's a track record in Syria, and dare I say, we did nothing at the time to punish him for it, and he learnt the lesson from that. So, yes, I think he holds it up his sleeve, but I don't think he will use it because I think he's going to win. In 2 or 3 weeks, the sheer force of what he's throwing at this, without worrying about his own losses, will eventually crumble, not least because the Ukraine will lose all its ports and its economy will be in ruins, and eventually it will have to sue for peace.
I was just going to ask about that, because I think that the expectation was that they were going to achieve a fairly quick victory, that in 48 hours they were going to take Kiev and they were going to decapitate the government in Ukraine. They haven't done that. And we're now on day 17, and it's a horrendous day 17, no doubt about it. But is it perhaps the case that the longer that they are delayed, the more that morale will be affected in the Russian army and Russia back home? I mean, they've lost now 11 generals, haven't they? 8 have been fired, 3 have been shot by whoever. So they've lost 11 generals. There is an indication that the tactics are wrong, the strategy is wrong, and morale is crumbling. Is that just window dressing? Is that just a good picture? I'm being Pollyannish?
Right. Can I just add one thing and then answer his point? And that I heard an American general, retired general, last night on radio or television saying that morale is actually the strongest single weapon that the Ukrainians have got over the Russians at the moment.
Indeed. And they're fighting for their homeland. And the Russians in the Second World War, Hitler thought he would walk through, he'd kick the door down and the whole rotten structure would crumble. But the Russians fought for their homeland. Most people will fight and die for their homeland, and the Ukrainians have proven that point. In answer to your question about, I think, to be honest, Putin cannot stop now. He has lost so much if he said, sorry, I've made a great mistake, and let's forgive and forget. So he will just throw everything he has at it. In answer to the question, I don't know what the Russian people know.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're not hearing you, they're not hearing me, they're getting what they get. And until the body bags come back like Afghanistan, but Afghanistan was 10 years, this is not going to be in 10 years, I suspect. Within a month, he will have achieved his aims.
We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and I want to draw the line at that and move it on much more to the domestic front. When we last spoke, Damien, you were unhappy, to say the least, about the government's response to the refugee crisis. And from everything all three of you have said, that is going to get worse before it gets any better. I'll just remind folk at home that you are a former Home Office minister. I filmed with you once with Theresa May and saw kind of work that was going on there. Have they finally got their finger out, or is it still looking tatty?
I'm less unhappy than I was last time we spoke about this, in that I think, the problem was They started off trying to tweak the existing immigration system, which would let people with family links come in. Now, that wasn't enough in itself, and also they needed to be a lot more generous within that route, which they've now done, allowing people to have their biometrics checked in this country and not have to stand at the Polish border and do it, all that kind of thing. So that's good. The second thing, it's a bit difficult to comment on because we won't know the details till Monday, which is the general humanitarian sponsorship scheme, meeting what has been a wave of generosity from people in this country, as it has in other European countries, saying basically, I've got a spare room, come and stay. And actually getting the details of that right is important. I can see why it's
That's the Michael Gove thing on Monday.
The Michael Gove thing on Monday.
Yeah.
But just to put this in perspective, the Afghan rescue mission, we've got about 18,000 or so people out of Afghanistan. Of those, 7, 8 months later, 4,500 are in permanent accommodation. So therefore, 12,000 plus aren't. They're still staying in hotels. Multiply that by 10, probably, for the Ukraine issue. We're going to have to find a lot of housing.
I'm going to risk a hammering either from you or from my other colleagues as well. Here's a thought, and that is that it's an acute political judgment at the very top that says, actually, deep down, Brits don't particularly like refugees. They don't particularly like people coming in. That's partly why we voted for Brexit. So we'll do the minimum. Different to France, different to Poland, throwing borders open.
Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. I think that misreads the British people. I think particularly...
But Priti Patel wanted to do more, and number 10, Department of Work and Pensions and Treasury said no.
So we read. I don't necessarily believe everything you read in newspapers. But I genuinely think that, just from my own email inbox as an MP, I think the generous impulse is there. Now, there is a legitimate say, in 2 years' time, if somebody's still living in your spare room, are you going to feel like...
No, absolutely.
And so the government has said it's got to be a minute. You've got to commit to a minimum of 6 months.
Yeah.
And I suspect realistically it might be more than that.
Yeah. But if you're getting a business off the ground, if you're trying to recruit people to meet demand that's there, this is not the answer.
Refugees? No, of course they're not the answer. And I do take issue. I agree with Damien. The British people I see are generous, warm-hearted, but they don't like being taken for a ride. And I think that you should differentiate between those two. But yes, if people are looking to build up the skills gap or whatever, longer term, you've got to make sure that you've got the skills, that you're growing them here, that you're using apprenticeships and trainings. But yes, short term, there will be people who actually welcome refugees who've got tradable skills and will be able to make use of it.
So you'd go along with him and say, accelerate it, get it going and make it stick?
Yes, but I would also say, Damien, you didn't mention Hong Kong, because we've got a few refugees from Hong Kong as well, haven't we?
Yes, not huge numbers, but again, they will be skilled, by and large, skilled people. So they are.
But it's not okay. It's not huge numbers now, but it's potentially an awful lot. I mean, I know a couple of a family that came from Hong Kong. He was UK born and bred, and brought his wife and children as well.
Let me bring Andrew back in again, and it's on the domestic front. But we read a great deal about kit that has been sent out there by the Ministry of Defence, whether it's anti-tank weaponry or that sort of thing. No aircraft involved apart from at the border. You're a planner. It costs a huge amount of money, and the Brit taxpayer is having to stump up for that on the day that that we get more and more ministers saying we've got to spend even more on defence.
Indeed, and we're going to have to spend more after. When I say we, Europe is going to have to stop, if you like, piggybacking on the US and start fronting up itself, which again, the politicians have got to decide, well, what are you going to chop in order to do that? There's a lot of talk about we must buy this, we must do that. Nobody ever says what we're going to chop in order to fund it. We can't keep borrowing, I'm sure you agree. We have to eventually decide on our priorities, and I see the defence budget going up maybe by 1%, but that has to be found from somewhere.
All right, we shall watch it. You two will be back a bit later on to talk about energy. You, sir, thank you very much indeed. Chocks away, and I hope very much indeed that you'll be able to join us again.
Tally-ho.
But for the time being, thank you all very much indeed for those wise reflections. You are indeed watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up on today's show. We will be crossing over to our reporters in Poland and Romania. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather right here.
What are we doing?
afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells and scattered showers, although turning windy in the southwest. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be turning increasingly windy across southwest England with gales or severe gales around coastal areas. A band of rain, heavy at times, will move eastwards through the afternoon. In contrast, the southeast will be mostly dry with sunny spells. The winds will freshen this afternoon, but it will feel pleasant in the sunshine. It'll initially be dry across Wales, but outbreaks of rain will arrive across Pembrokeshire through the afternoon. Winds will also increase, especially in the south. The northwest of England will be mostly dry, although the odd blustery shower is possible this afternoon. There will be plenty of sunny spells too. There'll also be a mix of sunshine and showers across the northeast of England, but here the showers will be a little more frequent and heavier. It'll be rather breezy too. Scotland will have similar conditions with sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will be heavy at times and winds will be lighter. It'll be a mostly dry but increasingly cloudy afternoon for Northern Ireland. The odd shower is possible towards the north and west, and the winds will pick up. So in summary, strong winds and outbreaks of heavy rain will spread north across western areas, while it will remain mainly dry in the east. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
After 27 minutes past 12, and you are watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, TV and radio. The humanitarian crisis continues as millions continue to flee over the border from Ukraine into neighbouring Poland, Hungary and Romania. Boris Johnson's defended the UK's response to the refugee crisis, and Britons will be able to take Ukrainians into their homes. The former Deputy Prime Minister Damien Green's just said on this programme, it's better, but it remains a work in progress. Well, our reporter, Paul Hawkins, is in Romania, near the Ukrainian border, and he joins me live now. Good to see you, and thanks for being there. What's the latest where you are?
Yeah, hi, Alistair. We are at Sziget Máramaros, which is about an hour and a half from where we were earlier on the breakfast show. Literally behind me, you can see the border. It's just a truck passing by, so we'll bear with us on that. But yeah, there's the border, and on the other side is Ukraine, and this side is Romania. Just to give you the latest figures from the Romanian border agency, Alistair. So 21,000 people entered Romania from Ukraine on Thursday, 8,000 of them through the border with Ukraine. That's down around 10% on the day before. In total, 344,000 people have entered Romania from Ukraine. 80% have left and made an onward journey to other countries such as Hungary, Germany, sometimes even France and Spain, etc. So that leaves 84,000 people in Romania. I'm just watching I'm just keeping an eye on a JCB that's coming down the road, making sure I don't get splatted. So 84,000 people are left in Romania. It's a big problem for the authorities in terms of where to house them. So the President of Romania, Klaus Iohannis, has been looking at building more homes, about making more semi-permanent and permanent homes available for the Romanians. But let's just show you very quickly what is happening here. There's a lot more activity than the other crossing we were at this morning. In fact, we were just about to walk down this road, but actually we can walk down this road. There's a big truck in place, bear with us. But these tents, like this one here, have sprung up by the side of the road. This one's organised by an agency. We'll show you that in just a moment. This one has been set up by the UN. This is a registration centre. We had a look inside. This is the most organised registration centre that I've seen. They don't want us to go inside and film, but we can stand here, and they've got different areas, so you can get legal advice, transport, legal services, etc. Really useful stuff, funded by UN money, by the UN's refugee agency. So very organised in there. But for those people who want to use it, mind the chair. And then if we have a little look over here, there's a mother and baby area there. We're not going to go in there for obvious reasons. And then if you have a look over here, this is one of the big Romanian charities that's helping with the humanitarian efforts. And if we just have a little poke in here, thank you. This is where people are just getting something to eat. He's having a little something to eat down there. Hello. Hello. And it's a similar scene to one that you've seen in other European countries, really, that we've seen on the border with Poland, on the border with Hungary. People have made really long journeys. They've travelled for days by various modes of transport, and they're now absolutely shattered when they get here, and the first thing they want to do is have a rest and get something to eat.
Well, I tell you what strikes me. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is where you were just now is the shelves absolutely stacked full, and I don't want it to be missed, because we're talking to a friend of mine who's trying to get more aid out there a bit later on. But that cooperation between the United Nations, all terribly formal, and the voluntary sector, the charities, that is magic to observe.
Yeah, it really is, because there is the logistics involved in every single person who comes across the border has a very individual story and individual needs, and matching, helping them facilitate their journey onwards and matching those needs with what is here, it's really difficult. So the UN and different aid agencies and the Romanian government at a national level and a local level coordinating that is really, really, really impressive. You're absolutely right. Just going to have a little word with someone down here that we've been talking to earlier. His name's Alex. He's from Kyiv. He's 33 years old. Alex. Hello. Hiya. Hi, Alex. Thanks for agreeing to speak to us. Really appreciate it. Just first of all, just tell us quickly, first of all, your journey from Kyiv to here. How was it?
We left Kyiv when first missiles strike Kyiv, 24th of February. I have two little children, wife, mother-in-law. The two women, they were very scary. And we were mentally ready for this, because there was a lot of political discussions that Russian Federation can start war with Ukraine. So we were packed, like documents, necessary things to come to escape from Kyiv, because we understand that Kyiv is not so far from Belarus, whereas a lot of Russian militaries was there more than a year. So we understand that it will be a lot of fights near Kyiv at the time. So we decided that something starts we don't wait and go immediately.
So how long was your journey?
Our journey was two days. 2 days we come to the border.
Yeah, and walking by car, by bus.
We go 2 days by car because there are a lot of jams on the Ukrainian roads to the border. And when we stay on the border, there was more than 8 kilometers of cars that stay there. And when it started to came a lot of students from the wonderful camps that studied in Ukraine, foreign students, and they all start to go by foot. It were more than 1,000 such students.
Wow.
Yes, a lot of buses come, and we understand that with cars we can go. Not in 1 day, but in 2 or 3 days, and with shortage of food and water.
So it's been a long, difficult journey.
Yes, and
just
and 5 children.
And 5. I mean, big challenges. Just very quickly, why Romania and where are you going?
Why Romania? Because we understood that a lot of our citizens come to Poland. To the border.
Yeah.
And there was more jams on the time.
So you couldn't get through. So you just thought, get out, come to Romania because it's easier.
Yes, it was easier. It was shorter.
Okay. And sorry, just one more quick question. You're 33 years old. Men of your age are fighting in Ukraine. I was just wondering why did you?
I have problem with my health in childhood, so I have problem with my one leg shorter. So I have. I'm handicapped. Yeah?
Okay. That's okay. Cool. Okay. Well, listen. Good luck. Good luck with where you're going, and really appreciate you speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Alex. There you go, Alistair. That's Alex's journey. He's actually a very rare person that we've spoken to. A man who's 33 years old, but as you heard there, for reasons of disability, he can't fight. But most of the people we speak to, of course, are women and children.
Paul, thank you very much indeed, and through you, thanks to your marvellous guests. Well done, Paul Hawkins there, live in Romania for us. Lots more still to come on the programme, including another couple, a Brit and a Ukrainian woman who got out and are now here. They'll be in the studio chatting to me about it. All of that after this break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Coming up to 20 to 1, and you're watching Alastair Stewart and listening, I hope, as well, if you're on radio, here with Alastair Stewart and friends on GB News. A vigil's underway at Winchester Cathedral this afternoon. People are invited to stand in solidarity with those who are affected by the war in Ukraine. GB News reporter Alice Porter has this report.
Over the last few weeks, so many of us have been watching the war in Ukraine, feeling absolutely helpless of the deteriorating situation. So Winchester Cathedral have today done a vigil and allowed people from across the community, across the area to come and pay their respects and reflect and remember people who are suffering in Ukraine. We've had talks from members of the Muslim community, of the Jewish community, the Christian community. I'm sure you can hear the beautiful music in the background. They've had the Ukrainian flag colours lighting up this incredible space, and members of the public have been invited to come with a candle or a daffodil and just lay them in front of the altar. I have to say the attendance has been absolutely incredible. We've had hundreds of people that have all come together to just have a moment of reflection and to remember the people who are sadly suffering in Ukraine.
Alice Porter there, reporting from Winchester Cathedral. Now, my next guests have an incredible story to share. Thomas and his wife, Irinia, have had quite a journey to be here today. Thomas moved to Ukraine in 2015 and married Irinia in 2016 and lived in Lviv. Thomas was advised by the Home Office at the start of the invasion, but understandably did not want to leave without his wife. After a roller coaster of a journey, they're finally safe here in London, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by both of them here live in the studio and an additional very special friend. Hello there. What's this one called?
Luca.
Well, Luca is free to do whatever Luca wants to do.
Okay.
But let me start, first of all, with the visa situation, because you're a Brit, Irinia is Ukrainian. Just had the Deputy Prime Minister here, former Deputy Prime Minister Damien Green, saying it started badly, it's beginning to get better, but it is, I can see in your eyes, it's a work in progress. Tell us your story.
Basically, I was advised by the embassy. I signed up to the embassy mailing list, which is a crisis email which comes through. And I was advised at the beginning of before the invasion to leave the country on an available commercial flight that was possible. I called the Home Office and the embassy, and they said I could get a visa for my wife. I had to apply at a visa centre in Kiev. I was a bit miffed by this because I'd realised that the embassy had moved from Kiev to Lviv, and they wanted us to go to Kiev to go through the visa application. I said, well, if war's going to start, that's one of the first places it's going to start.
I mean, similar to the French situation where they said it's in Calais, then it was in Paris, then it was in Lille.
The day we were meant to go to do this visa application is the day the bombs started dropping.
Yeah.
So,
did it leave you feeling that you weren't wanted, or that you were up against a system that really was just not up to it?
Of course, we don't want to leave Ukraine,
Yeah, sure.
but the situation was scared, and we decided to go to England. And I'm very happy, and I want to say a big thank you for government for possibility to be right now next to my husband and with dog. It's miracles that we go through all these things. Yeah, still we have some bureaucratic problem, but I think it will be fixed. It just rules changing so fast.
That's a really important point. I only button to underline it because, again, talking to my previous guests, is that sometimes you get nasty incompetence that just don't want you, but this was kind of just, in the circumstances, perhaps understandable incompetence.
Yeah, all people very nice to us, and they want to help. It just system can't update in time because rules change, and government did a big job. We can be here,
Sure.
and Ukrainian family can come here. It's just a little bit pieces,
Yeah.
which is should be ordered.
Just as you came in, or just before you came in, we were talking to Paul, our reporter in Romania, and he was talking to a guy at the end of the piece about the journey that he'd had from Kyiv.
arduous journey for everyone.
What was the journey like for you two?
Our journey was heavy. I mean, we left Lviv and we were in a 5-kilometre queue for 36 hours, moving maybe 2 meters every hour. Painfully watching people trudge towards the border with their families, children in tow, and then guys coming back without their wives and children.
Just pause, just because we have people who listen on radio as well as watch on television. These are still pictures of you and your family and other people you came across.
These are pictures that I took from the border.
Yeah. And we're now looking at a queue that goes on and on and on, and it's cars and vans and the rest of it. Did you see nasty military stuff as well?
No nasty military stuff. I think they were really concentrated on what was going away from the border. There was military movement towards the border, back and forth, obviously, for whatever reason.
Mainly in the east and around Kiev.
Yeah, around Kiev. I know people in Kiev that have joined their local defence forces, and I know military people. So, you know, it's a lot of movement.
You still have friends and family there?
Yeah, it's what we feel like a little bit guilty because we can escape of this situation, but still my mother there, my friends.
You feel
there.
guilty for seeking your safety and to be with your husband.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange.
On behalf of everybody watching, I forgive you.
Yeah, it's strange to explain, but it's like colleague, friends, family still there. They can't move, and it's. But we will do what we can from here. And like Thomas says before, his voice is his gun, so we can do whatever we can, the way we can. So
I think my sister basically said, "You're better off shooting your mouth off than a gun."
Yeah, get out of it. But obviously, Irinia left friends and extended family there as well. Did you leave a business there or a job
I left a
there?
business there.
Is that written off now?
No, it's a business. It's web-based business, but the bulk of the clientele are from Ukraine. I was doing proofreading, editing, translating, English teaching, working in IT companies, and everything's shut down now. So, you know, I built something in 7 years from nothing.
I said at the beginning of the programme that my big fear was that basically the United States and NATO have written Ukraine off. They've conceded it so long as Putin doesn't go any further, not into Poland, not into Romania or anything like that. Do you, as a Ukrainian, fear that your country did its best, but ultimately it will fall to Russia?
I think we don't know much what's going on. So probably my government don't want to make panic. And of course they prepare for this situation. And we, now Ukrainian army doing the best what they can, and it's very motivated and very brave, and little country fighting for my country, but not just for my country, it's for whole world and for whole Europe, because the longer Putin can't get what he wants, he become more dangerous. So we need support, what we have right now, from whole world, and it's amazing. We feel not alone, and we become stronger of this feeling. So everyone who can help, who can do something for this against this terrible war, we should do, and place Putin in prison. Really, we should do this.
Another thing that strikes me, and there are some really clever pieces have been written about it, and we're being told, stop talking about President Zelensky as a guy who used to be a comedian and won Strictly Come Dancing. He's a hero. He's an absolutely terrific guy. We're seeing and reading and hearing from afar. What kind of guy is he, in your eyes, as a Ukrainian?
Okay, when he became president, it was like different. People feel different. So half of Ukraine vote for him. So he is real president. It's not half, 73% basically. So we wanted to new blood, new people in government. We want to change everything, but some was not really very positive about this because he don't have big experience of diplomatic all this way. But now we can see he's strong, he's honest, he is our president, and he's not. He's in Kiev, and he motivated. He every day make us sure that everything will be fine. Yeah. So I'm proud of him.
And you know, as an objective Brit, what that means when your wife says Zelensky is still in Kiev.
He's stepped up to the plate. I mean, he really has, you know, shown strength to his people. You know, he's there. He's had the offer to be extracted by SAS or special forces or whatever. He's still there, and that really shows the people that he's there 100%, and he's sticking to his guns, and he's doing the best he can. I take my hat off to him. You know, incredible.
I guess you were probably travelling, or you may have even got here by the time that he delivered that impassioned observation where he said, if, God forbid, Ukraine falls, next Moldova, Georgia, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, all the way to the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
Your dad was a very senior journalist. You know what the significance of
Sure.
1989 and the
Sure.
Berlin Wall is.
Exactly.
Do you think that's credible, or is that him just trying to rally the troops?
It's credible. I think it's credible. Putin has got a bee in his bonnet about the fall of the Iron Curtain, and he was in Dresden, as a KGB officer doing whatever he was doing, and he's just obsessed. He's obsessed with this ex-Soviet bloc countries, this power. I'm not really a political person, but I see what's going on. So, yes, it's very feasible. It's very feasible. If bombs start dropping in West Ukraine, that's very close to the Polish border. If one of those missiles or one of those bombs goes off course into Poland, it's going to change the whole...
But you mentioned aircraft, and a question to both of you. Biden, again, last night on television, saying, we won't do the no-fly zone because, as you say, if a missile goes astray or you take out a command and control centre just inside Russia, what have you, Third World War. With everything that's at stake, and actually let me come to Irynia first on that, with everything that is at stake, and it is your country, it is your family, it is your friends, do you accept that? Do you buy that for the sake of, as it were, global peace?
It's a hard question and it's hard to answer. Honestly, of course, I want that Ukrainian will be safe. And honestly, I think that if we will not stop him here, he will go in front, like you says, Poland and other country. So we should do everything it's possibility to do. But of course, we can't decide about this. And we are not NATO. Maybe we have 10 years to come to NATO, but we don't. So, of course, I understand that people worried about the situation, but we should understand if we will not stop him right now, it will be dangerous for the whole world. So we should be brave and do whatever we can to stop this monster.
Final thought, you strike me as being the sort of guy that if you do disagree with your lovely wife, you'd say it, but I'm sensing from your eyes you don't disagree with a word of that.
I don't disagree with anything of that. I mean, any husband and wife has a disagreement point, but, what she's saying is totally correct. I've lived in Ukraine, 2015, the year after, the invasion of Donbass and the annexation of Crimea. I know people that have been killed. I know military people. I know, high-up officers, and, I know the situation. This has been going on, and it's been smouldering for quite a while. This is blown up now, and this is serious. It's, yeah.
Thank you for finding time for us.
Thank you.
And we wish you both well, all three of you well.
Thank you very much.
Keep in touch with us and let us know how it develops and perhaps come in and bring us up to date, particularly if you hear from friends and family in Ukraine. But let's all hope and pray it ends well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed. Thomas Jones and his wife Irynia and their lovely doggy there. They managed to leave Ukraine and find safety here in the UK, and they are very welcome. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up on the programme this afternoon. I'll be joined by my friend Matt Millen. Find out how he's doing his bit to help people fleeing Ukraine using his horse boxes. But first, let's take a look at the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells and scattered showers, although turning windy in the southwest. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be turning increasingly windy across southwest England with gales or severe gales around coastal areas. A band of rain, heavy at times, will move eastwards through the afternoon. In contrast, the southeast will be mostly dry with sunny spells. The winds will freshen this afternoon, but it will feel pleasant in the sunshine. It'll initially be dry across Wales, but outbreaks of rain will arrive across Pembrokeshire through the afternoon. Winds will also increase, especially in the south. The northwest of England will be mostly dry, although the odd blustery shower is possible this afternoon. There'll be plenty of sunny spells too. There'll also be a mix of sunshine and showers across the northeast of England, but here the showers will be a little bit more frequent and heavier. It'll be rather breezy as well. Scotland will have similar conditions with sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will be heavy at times and winds will be lighter. It'll be a mostly dry but increasingly cloudy afternoon for Northern Ireland. The odd shower is possible towards the north and west, and the winds will pick up. So in summary, strong winds and outbreaks of heavy rain will spread north across western areas, while it will remain mainly dry in the east. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 5 to 1. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends on GB News. If, like me, you love equestrian sport, my next guest is surely one of the most recognisable voices in the game. I have known Matt Millen for years, so when he called me up, I wasn't surprised until he said, I want to take the horse boxes to Ukraine, full of aid stuff, and then bring them back full of refugees. Who should I talk to? He joins me now live with his friend Steve Barnes, who has been helping him. Great to see you guys. Congratulations. Actually, Amanda put a thing on Facebook this morning, Matt, bringing us right up to date. You've had donations, you've had help from local schools, the co-op, all sorts of folk. Give us a quick take on where you stand, Matt.
It's the support, Alistair, has been unbelievable. It was something that started literally 5 or 6 days ago with one truck and 2 people taking aid out there. Now, Stephen, my dear friend here, he'll fill in a bit more later on because he has a bit of an issue keeping with rules, and it's his idea to get all the aid out there and try and bring people back because he's managed to get some properties in Europe as well to get families there. And the people who've donated have been immense. We started off with one truck, Alistair, and you know what I'm like when I've done charity work in the past, and it has snowballed. We now have 5 18-ton trucks going out, potentially a couple more 7.5s. And the support we've had from local businesses and people, and I have to mention a very special lady called Caroline Basnett, who has basically opened up her yard to be a centre point for people to drop all the aid off. And I was there myself yesterday, and it's immense what we've got.
Let me bring Steve in just for a quick thought, because you mentioned it in passing. It's a key point. Have the authorities been supportive, helpful, ignored you, just let you get on with it? What's that been like?
So far, we've had to largely get on with this. We've sent a few inquiries. We've not had any responses. We've not had any replies to emails. So we decided we can make this happen ourselves. We've got a plan. We've had some great support off the ferry companies, off customs people privately. We're going to go over there and we're going to just do things. We would love some contacts from charities, all the authorities, to help make it more coordinated and we could be more efficient. But otherwise, we will just go and we'll make it happen.
And what Steve's just described there, Matt, will be as nothing to the challenges that you'll face when you start to try and bring refugees back, having unloaded the lorries with kit and gear and food, and then loading up with people. Who are you talking to? I suggested you had a word with the Home Office, the Foreign Office. Any progress on that front?
Stephen's been dealing with that. I've been speaking mainly to people who've already been involved with it. Some friends of ours, Phil Judge and Rhys Oliver, are literally just come back. Rhys has just called me literally 10 minutes before we came and joined you, telling me what is desperate to get out there. And again, that's another thing that Steve's got to address, because the biggest problems at the moment is they're desperate for first aid kits. We know that, and we're trying to get companies on board to give us those to take out when we go on Friday. They're also desperate. They're telling me that because of the situation in Ukraine, getting power and energy to them, cooking food is a massive issue, but they can heat water. So they're looking for food that can be reconstituted to be built up and do things of that nature. So it's all things coming literally, but probably before we hear it on the news, coming straight from what's happened out there in the last 12 hours.
Steve, I'm going to ask the team to put up a picture or two, if we can lay our hands on them, of the trucks. There we have it. A fine, rather excellent crimson lorry, Black Cat it's called. I'm thinking that that's at least a 12-horse box. It may be slight. There we are. That's the inside of it. How much kit and gear can you get in there? That's called the living area, by the way, but that'll probably take kit as well. How much can you get in there, Steve?
We can get as much as any other rigid truck. So we can fill the living space, we can fill the rear space with goods on the way out. Once we get over there, we'll offload all of that kit. We'll keep some kit on board to help the people we meet. We'll then relocate towards the border. We'll initially convert the rear of the lorries to provide food, hot drinks to those people you've seen who just left walking along the streets with their children. We'll look after them. We'll keep them warm. We'll give them somewhere to sleep, somewhere to sit, somewhere to recuperate. The kids can do some colouring. They can take their mind off it, and we'll look after people on the ground. The minute it quietens down, and we're in a position to move people, we can move them. We can move them within Europe really easily. And once we've got enough people with UK visas in a central position, we can move those back.
Gentlemen, it's just slipped past 1 o'clock, so I have to take a break. But do me one final favour. Matt, give my love to Amanda. But both of you, when you're there and up and running, you call us and let us know what's going on. Send video clips. We wish you all the luck in the world. On the right of your picture there, Matt Millen, and on the left, Steve. And we really do wish you well. It's a brilliant effort.
Thanks, Alistair. Thanks very much.
And the time is just coming up to 1 minute past 1. Steve Barnes there and Matt Millen. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. We've plenty more still to come, so do stay with us for the rest of Alastair Stewart and Friends. Hello and welcome if you've just joined us at 1 minute past 1. And hello and thanks for being with us since 12 o'clock if that was your choice. I am Alastair Stewart and we are into the final hour of our programme. We'll be keeping you company here on TV and on radio. Plenty more still to come, including more on our top discussion, the Ukraine crisis, and what impact it's having on our cost of living crisis here in the United Kingdom. Damien Green and Rory McCallion are still here with me and we'll be joined by an energy expert to help us make some sense of it all. But first, let's bring you right up to date with the latest news. Here's Ray Addison.
Thanks, Alistair. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 1. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, as it would be World War III. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help deter Russian aggression. The troops flew out of Fort Stewart in Georgia to join thousands of others in the region.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
President Biden. President Zelensky has demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. It comes after Ukrainian authorities released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting him. GB News cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. Moscow has not commented on the video, but President Zelensky says Russia has violated international law.
Today in Melitopol, the invaders captured the mayor of the city, a mayor who courageously defends Ukraine and the people of his community. Obviously, this is a sign of the weakness of the invaders. They did not find any support on our land, although they counted on it. Now, the Russian forces have switched to a new stage of terror when they are trying to physically eliminate representatives of the legitimate local Ukrainian authorities.
President Zelensky there. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicine there today. Health Secretary Sajid Javid told GB News that the UK is sending medical equipment to Ukraine.
We've been working very hard with our Ukrainian friends ever since the start of the conflict on humanitarian aid. So far, in terms of medical support, we've sent out 6 flights from the UK full of medical supplies and equipment and vital medicines and wound packages. We're coordinating also with our European friends to make sure that together we can provide everything that
the UK's Health Secretary. Meanwhile, the French president has criticised the UK government's response to helping Ukrainian refugees. Emmanuel Macron said he expected better of Britain's visa policy, which requires applicants to apply in person in Brussels or Paris. In response, the Home Office said it was bringing in measures to make the process quicker by allowing people to apply online. Speaking on the Polish-Ukrainian border, one city's deputy mayor told GB News he had seen little support from the British government.
I do not know what the UK is doing. I'm here 15th day. I'm here 16 hours per day. We are tired. There is 1.5 million refugees that have already arrived in Poland. Some estimates predict that it may be a further 6 or 7, reaching up to 8 million people. Poland will not be able to cope with that number. So yes, we do need support. We do need help, and the UK should be one of those countries helping us.
The Premier League has disqualified Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich from being a director at the club. In a statement, it said the measures were imposed following sanctions by the UK government. However, it won't impact the club's ability to train or play fixtures. Under the current rules imposed by the government, the club cannot sell any new tickets or merchandise. And new research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April. But average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain families were under, said it's introducing a £21 billion package of support. OK, this is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Thanks, Ray. I am Alastair Stewart, and until 2 o'clock I'll be keeping you company along with friends and hopefully friendly guests. Still to come, gas prices continue to surge, worsened by the growing boycott of Russian output and, of course, the continuing growth in demand as the world economy recovers from the pandemic. Also, global grain prices have soared by 50% in the last fortnight. I'll be speaking to experts that can help us make sense of all of that. Plus, Moscow's cyber war capabilities have long been a cause for concern. Ukrainian websites have been subjected to a relentless series of attacks. But how prepared are we here in the UK when it comes to those potential cyber attacks? And before 2 o'clock, I'll be joined by the President of the CBI, Lord Karan Bilimoria, to discuss how business has been hit by the war, but also what they're doing to support Ukrainians. GB News is all about you, our viewers, so any burning questions or stories that you think we need to cover, no matter how big or small, we genuinely want to hear them. Get your voice heard by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk and put Alastair Stewart in the subject line. We're also on YouTube, so do subscribe to our channel there at GB News. Talking of which, you have indeed been in touch on our first big take this morning, which was Ukraine. We're going to move on to energy in just a moment, but here's a couple of quickies. Kevin sent this one in. Hopefully Ukraine's president will survive this war, so we should get him to run this country. He seems to have more ideas about running a country than useless ministers we have. Mike says, it really makes me fume to keep hearing from our leaders that World War III will happen if Ukraine gets a no-fly zone. Putin's mad, but mad enough to want World War III, ? I don't think so. Hospitals and schools bombed and the indiscriminate murder of civilians. Just how much more are we going to see before we take action? We must get a no-fly zone over Ukraine now. Kevin and Mike and the rest of you, thank you very much indeed. Keep those views coming in and do subscribe to the channel, YouTube, GB News. So as I said right at the beginning, today we're also looking at the energy crisis, which has got significantly worse since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I mentioned earlier that I had a call from my local petrol station warning me of a 15% price hike on Monday. Prices continue to surge and worsen since the boycott of Russian output, not forgetting the growth in demand as the world recovers from the COVID pandemic. And as you heard in the news earlier, new research from the TUC today says that energy bills are set to rise at least 14 times faster than wages this year, while the price cap for gas and electricity set by Ofgem will go up by 54% in April. It all means that energy price rises alone could wipe out or exceed pay rises. So, has the Ukraine crisis made those matters even worse? I'm delighted to be rejoined by Damien Green, the former Deputy Prime Minister, Home Office Minister and former Immigration Minister, my old mate Rory McCallion, freelance writer and co-founder of Industrio. There he is, got him on a single shot. And joining us afresh to tackle the issue of energy crisis, I'm delighted to say is Tony Lodge, who's Research Fellow at the Centre for Policy Studies, leading on the energy crisis. You two, thanks for coming back. You, very warm welcome to you. The first point I want to just throw out to all of you is that we had an energy crisis long before the Ukraine crisis. And I'll go along this direction for obvious reasons. Did we simply drag our feet for too long?
We did. We've dragged our feet for the best part of 30 to 40 years.
30 to 40?
Yes. So if you remember 1973, and everyone always talks about the Great Oil Shock, we actually had a miners' strike in 1972 and one in 1974. So that actually exposed an overdependence on coal as well as an overdependence on oil and
As
gas.
you said that, my days as an industrial correspondent and Sheikh Yamani came back to me at meetings at the London Hilton.
And Alistair, what's very interesting is that the Edward Heath government, which fell out of power in 74, had plans to build lots of new nuclear reactors. That didn't happen. Wilson comes back and we then have the plan for coal. So we turn back to coal. Mrs Thatcher comes in 79. We have another plan under David Howell, her first energy secretary, to build up to 15 new nuclear reactors. Only one gets built at Sizewell. We then go through the 80s and we have the dash for gas under Michael Heseltine and John Major. So our overdependence on fuels, whether they be coal or gas, has actually been in the system now for a very long time.
So that's 3 clear missed opportunities which industry would have been falling over itself to meet had government given it the green light.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The antipathy towards nuclear, I understand partly why, because of 3 Mile Island, if you remember 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima, which got the Germans to switch off their nuclear power. They are worrying, but you've got to be practical about it. The coal is polluting and it was ultimately going to run out. The oil is a hydrocarbon that was ultimately going to run out as well. If you are going to get longer term zero carbon or low carbon energy, you have got to look at nuclear longer term. Now we've got Sizewell, sorry, not Sizewell C, that's a possibility, but Hinkley Point C, which is in the process of being built. There is a proposal for more mini nukes, small modular nuclear power plants, which can be built quite quickly, and I think it's fair to say can be up and running in about 5 years?
7, 8, 9.
Yeah. Well, that's almost as much as Hinkley C. Sorry.
You set Damien up perfectly for that, because I saw your jaw dropped and your eyes rose. We did take our eye off the ball for a long period of time, but B, the timeline now for finding or rediscovering these solutions that my other two guests have said, 5, maybe 7 years. We are in a fix.
We are in a fix. And I think two things. First of all, looking historically, it wasn't so much that politicians didn't give the green light, it was that politicians didn't give the money, which would either have meant spending taxpayers' money or increasing electricity prices. But frankly, the pain that people would have suffered 30, 40 years ago if we'd built all these nuclear reactors is as nothing to the pain people are looking at now. And the second point is, and I agree, everyone says it takes 9 years to build one of these modular nuclear reactors, to which I say, as a layman in this, really? And particularly if they're modular reactors, they're all the same. So once you've approved them and know that they're safe, why does it take 9 years?
And Rolls-Royce have got the blueprints.
And we're already using them in submarines and so on. So I think that's one of the things I want to see the government squeeze on.
Let me go in this direction now on my second point, and that is, given Ukraine and surging oil prices and my friend phoning me up saying 15% more come Monday, is it not now the time to put the brakes on net zero, to greenlight fracking, and even to look at the tax regime on petrol and domestic energy prices?
I think it's absolutely not the time to give up on net zero, because having got the world, most of the world, into a position of agreeing it, particularly at our own conference at COP26, if we start saying now, OK, fine, we didn't mean it, first crisis, we're out of here, then we'll never do it, and the planet will burn. It's as serious as that. We've got a terrible crisis on our hands around the globe now. It would be worse. So let's not do that.
It's that profound a point of principle as opposed to Damien Green pragmatism.
No, I'm being pragmatic about it. I mean, you look at all the evidence. If we carry on with the same energy mix that with more countries getting economically advanced, the reason why China is such a big polluter is that China is so big. China, with a successful economy, is much more damaging to the environment with traditional power sources than Britain, because they're just much bigger than we are.
What's the take on the shop floor from industry, from manufacturers?
Well, an increase in energy costs is always very bad news. And it's not actually just energy when you're talking about gas and oil. It's also raw materials for things that are being made.
But you also want a planet that you can sell goods to.
Absolutely. Now, I don't, Damien, I'm in favour of net zero. But I think that we maybe have to be pragmatic in the short term. And given that we're going to see supplies curtailed from Russia, which currently supplies 35 to 40% of EU gas, interestingly, although yesterday, Friday morning, flows through Nord Stream 1, were up to what they were in December. So there's not a massive amount of interruption there. But the reason why prices have gone up is because the futures market fears that there's going to be an interruption to supply.
Score the two arguments.
Yeah, so I think the fundamental point here is we are in a situation, I don't think you have to abandon net zero as the legislation exists. This is the biggest wake-up call, to use another historical context, since we realised we had to wean ourselves off unionised coal in 1985 with Mr. Scargill. We have got to move away from an over-dependence on gas, which limits our energy security. We've also, by the way, Alistair, and no one ever talks about it, we're increasingly importing electricity from the continent. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be generating all the electricity we need in Britain, here, where we levy the same carbon taxes and the same transmission charges.
He knows it damn fine as a Kent MP.
Yeah. But the net zero point is this can actually get you to net zero. It will help you get to net zero. The sector which has the biggest problem on net zero is transport. The transport emissions in this country remain stubbornly high. They haven't moved much since 1990. That opens up all opportunities for rail freight, getting stuff off the motorways. The opportunities are huge.
Juliet Samuels in The Telegraph wrote an intriguing piece this morning, basically saying she accepts the mantra from Margaret Thatcher that you can't buck markets. But if you left it to markets, we wouldn't be where we are now on energy and on energy prices.
Maybe not, but I mean, at the moment, if you just let markets operate, then presumably you'd have a huge spike. I mean, I think and the point about energy policy that makes it so difficult is that the benefits are all very long term. You know, decisions you take now might benefit somebody in 15 years' time, but actually, if you let markets operate purely, then you get short-term spikes that make life very miserable for people. And I absolutely take Tony's point that it's not just a UK problem, that actually Germany, because it took that foolish decision to drop nuclear power altogether after Fukushima, is more vulnerable than we are. And actually, just as I think we should crack on with building nuclear plants, I would love to see the Germans do as big a U-turn as they did on defence spending a couple of weeks ago and say, you know what, we've changed our mind, we're going to build nuclear plants as well.
But at the EU summit yesterday in Versailles, they did embrace quite a lot of that. And Ursula said, and it will mean European Union money and it will mean individual nation states money, but it's going to take 5 years. So she was somewhere between the two timescale points. I mean, their heart is in the right place, but it's like St. Augustine, isn't it? Make me virtuous, but tomorrow.
Well, I think it's not so much, it's not quite make me chaste, but not yet. It's make me chaste, but it'll take me 5 years to build the appropriate equipment.
Yeah, okay.
I won't follow that analogy.
Let me stick with that. Juliet's point in the Telegraph and markets. I mean, when I was writing my notes for this conversation, I literally wrote down that the power generation industry is not fit for purpose, nor actually is the distribution.
No,
we had a whole bunch of people that we as taxpayers are now bailing out by the billion because they didn't understand actually how the system worked, buying forward. They signed up hundreds of thousands of consumers. Oh, sorry, can't do it now. Total mess.
No. We're with the Centre for Policy Studies, after all. Keith Joseph founded it, and Margaret Thatcher founded it in 1975. There are key elements from the old Central Electricity Generating Board, which were thrown out when we privatised electricity in 1990, which should have been retained, such as a strategic responsibility on the desk of ministers to manage energy resilience and security. And that wasn't there. Now, one of the ironies of the old CEGB was it used to actually be criticised for having an electricity surplus capacity in this country. We had idle power stations. Isle of Grain, down on the Solent there, the Forley power station. They often weren't used, but they were there. Now, we don't have that anymore. We do not. We have a deficit in electricity generation capacity in this country. We're plugging the hole with imports from undersea wires under the English Channel from Holland, France and elsewhere. Alistair, they could be pumping in electricity which is being actually powered by coal.
Yes.
And we can't tax it because we don't know where it's come from. Now, that's absurd. And if we're talking about markets, actually, we've interfered in markets in the energy system, so that's not actually true. We have a carbon price floor, which actually has intervened massively to force coal off the system and is now increasingly penalising gas. The beauty of nuclear power, atomic power as it was once called, is that, of course, it wouldn't be harmed by a carbon price floor for obvious reasons.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, I'm just being told very firmly in my ear. There are solutions, but they will take a long time. We made decisions in the past that perhaps we wish we hadn't done. But the two final points, starting with you, is that in your annual review that you've done of the state of UK industry, you say 21 was much better than everybody expected. 22 is looking pretty chunky. This could kill the golden goose.
It certainly could. It's not just the price of energy, which will increase industry's costs massively. It's also the actual supply of it, and this is what we have been talking about. And I would actually argue that we do go for fracking because you can do it quickly, and we have got a short-term chasm that has to be covered. And if we don't, then the consequences will knock on for quite some time.
Yeah, final point to you, and I do read all the newspapers, as you well know, but not only Juliet, but the leader in the Telegraph today is quite profound. And it says the cost of living crisis, with energy at its heart, could determine the next general election. If you include the national insurance rise, says the Telegraph, it's an historic error, economically and politically. Do you think Number 10 realises that?
Everyone in politics realises how this behemoth is coming towards us of a cost of living crisis, not least because people are already getting their 12-month fix electricity and gas prices for the next year, and they're eye-watering. So yes, I mean, but I think the way to solve a short-term crisis is by concentrating help on those who need it most, rather than ripping up long-term plans. And if the Telegraph is arguing, let's cancel the national insurance increase, then fine. Where do you find £12 billion to put into health and social care? Or do you want the NHS waiting lists to go up again? All these actions have consequences that are more than economic.
So Damien Green holds his ground absolutely on net zero and on national insurance.
Yes, but I would do other things, and I suspect the government will do other things.
Well, we'll do that
in
next
terms
time
of
we come
helping.
in.
Indeed.
I've really enjoyed that, but much more importantly, I think folk at home will have greatly appreciated the wisdom and the sense of history, and also the theoretical lessons, not only for us trying to fill up our petrol tanks on Monday, but also industry trying to continue delivering the goods in terms of profit, employment and the rest of it. Damien, Rory and Tony, thank you all very much indeed. We've plenty more still to come in just a little over half an hour of the programme here on Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, why one bank has barred Russian-based staff from computer systems amid the cyber attack fear. We'll be speaking to an ethical hacker to help us make some sense of that. But first, let's have a look at the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells and scattered showers, although turning windy in the southwest. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be turning increasingly windy across southwest England, with gales or severe gales around coastal areas. A band of rain, heavy at times, will move eastwards through the afternoon. In contrast, the southeast will be mostly dry with sunny spells. The winds will freshen this afternoon, but it will feel pleasant in the sunshine. It'll initially be dry across Wales, but outbreaks of rain will arrive across Pembrokeshire through the afternoon. Winds will also increase, especially in the south. The northwest of England will be mostly dry, although the odd blustery shower is possible this afternoon. There'll be plenty of sunny spells too. There'll also be a mix of sunshine and showers across the northeast of England, but here the showers will be a little bit more frequent and heavier. It'll be rather breezy as well. Scotland will have similar conditions with sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will be heavy at times and winds will be lighter. It'll be a mostly dry but increasingly cloudy afternoon for Northern Ireland. The odd shower is possible towards the north and west, and the winds will pick up. So in summary, strong winds and outbreaks of heavy rain will spread north across western areas, while it will remain mainly dry in the east. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's inching towards 1:30. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News TV and radio. There's no doubt about it, in our day-to-day lives, we are all reliant on technology. With the news that BNP Paribas has barred Russian-based staff from computer systems as cyber attack fears grow, it raises the question just how robust are organisations in warding off cyber attacks? Well, my next guest is described as an ethical hacker, specialising in the threats that physical intrusion poses to cyber security. And I'm hoping he can tell us more. It's Rob Shapland, and there he is, the ethical hacker. Rob, great to see you. Are you basically on a mission to find out what we are potentially going to be victims of?
That's it. Yeah. So hi, nice to be on. So yeah, my job kind of is to simulate the criminal attacks that are going on in the world. So at the moment, obviously, we've got Russia targeting Ukraine and potentially the rest of the world, and people fighting back and everything. So my job is to kind of get companies ready for those hacks by doing them myself. So either through
a mystery shopper, you're a mystery hacker.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I try and simulate those things and see if I can get in and then help them defend against it if I can.
You know perfectly well, but one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you was in the context of Ukraine. I mean, can you give us a measure of just how big the cyber element is of the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Yeah, I can. So obviously cyber attacks have increased, but perhaps not to the level we thought yet. There's several potential reasons for that. It could be that the capability is less than we anticipated. More likely, there's a chance that they weren't actually that ready for the cyber attack part of it, because we've seen, in terms of the physical attacks on Ukraine, perhaps the army wasn't as ready, wasn't told about it. There's a prevailing theory that perhaps that's happened with the cyber element as well. So it could be a whole number of reasons why that's happened. But yeah, there have been an increasing number of cyber attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure and things like that. But what we haven't seen much of yet is that going to the rest of the world. So we haven't seen attacks on the UK or the US in any real increase of numbers so far.
And to be crystal clear, this is a battlefield weapon. You can try and do a cyber attack on air, command and control centres, what have you. But also, as we are trying to with sanctions, you can disrupt the economy with cyber attacks as well.
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, exactly. So you can do attacks on infrastructure like water, power, etc. But obviously, it's a bit more effective to just fire a missile at it. So in most cases, they'll choose that route. But with the cyber attacks attacking the economy, you can go for private companies that are a bit less defended. So in the UK, our sort of public infrastructure, water, power, etc., is really, really well defended. But our private companies are not quite so good. They don't have the software in place, the ability to protect and detect these cyber attacks as they occur. So they're a bit more vulnerable. And if you can affect lots of large companies, then of course that has an impact on the economy.
Sure.
So like I said, we haven't seen that so far too much, but there's no reason why that wouldn't start expanding as the war slows down in terms of how they're progressing.
As an ethical hacker, I'm not suggesting for one moment that you head off to Cheltenham and try and get in there, but how good are our own GCHQ people, the General Communications Centre, the government's listening post? How good are they?
Oh, they're extremely good. I can't explain just how good they are. They're very, very good at defending everything. The advice they give to private companies through the NCSC, National Cybersecurity Centre, is brilliant. I often reference that when I'm doing training and things like that because it's so good. So I think we're in very safe hands in that regard, definitely.
And do you sense, I mean, you hinted at it a little earlier in the conversation, but do you sense whatever the battlefield outcome is, and I don't want to be dismissive of that because it's humanity, it's horrible and it's ghastly, but whatever the outcome of that, either Russia wins or Ukraine is able to repel the attack, that we are going to see more of this kind of thing in our everyday lives, whether it's coming from Moscow or Beijing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we must have seen over the last few years the number of cyber attacks coming in. It's a huge number, and companies are getting targeted an increasing amount through something called ransomware, which you've probably heard of, where they encrypt all the files and you have to pay a ransom fee. And the levels this is getting to is huge, and the criminal groups, often based out of Russia, are making millions from each single attack they're doing against a company. So if you multiply that out over thousands of companies, they're literally making billions every single year. And of course, that money disrupts the companies that are affected, but it also allows the perpetrators to use that money to do other attacks. So yeah, I think on the back of this conflict, we will see an increased threat from both sides on the cyber side of things, definitely.
Rob Shapland, absolutely fascinating, and thank you very much indeed for telling us a wee bit about what you do and why, but also broadening it out into that geopolitical arena. Thank you very much indeed, and you look after yourself. That was Rob Shapland there, who's, as I said, ethical hacker. He's also head of cyber service at Phalanx Cyber. Look him up and find out more. It's an absolutely intriguing story. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've plenty more still to come this afternoon. I'll be joined by Lord Karam Bilamoria, the president of the CBI, to talk about the impact that the war has had on business and that energy crisis. But first, let's bring you right up to date with the latest news headlines. Here's Ray.
Thanks, Alistair. It's 33 minutes past 1. US President Joe Biden has stressed that his country will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine, as it would be World War III. In a tweet, he said the United States would defend every inch of NATO territory, but a direct confrontation must be prevented. Meanwhile, a further 130 US soldiers have deployed to Europe to assist NATO allies and help deter Russian aggression. President Zelensky has demanded the immediate release of the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov. It comes after Ukrainian authorities released CCTV footage which they say shows Russian forces abducting him. GBNews cannot independently verify the video. However, it's reported he was kidnapped from the southeastern city, which has fallen under control of Vladimir Putin's forces. Russia has not commented on the video. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the bulk of Russian forces are now around 15 miles away from the centre of Kyiv. Meanwhile, the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Sumy and Mariupol are encircled and suffering heavy Russian shelling. President Zelensky has accused Russia of refusing to allow people out of Mariupol and says efforts will be made to deliver food and medicines there today. And in the UK, new research from the TUC says energy bills could increase at least 14 times faster than wages this year. Their analysis shows that gas and electricity bills are set to rise by 54% when the price cap changes in April, but average weekly wages will go up by just over 3%. A government spokesperson said it recognised the strain families were under and it's introducing a £21 billion package of support. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Alastair Stewart and Friends will be back in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 22 minutes to 1. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News. We've been speaking today about the impact this Russian invasion of Ukraine has had on our energy sector here in the UK. I wanted to unpick how much of this has had an impact on you and me and how it impacts on big companies. My next guest can answer just that to perfection. Delighted to be joined live now by Lord Karen Bilimoria, founder of Cobra Beer, president of the Confederation of British Industry, life peer in the UK House of Lords, and also University Chancellor. I don't know, Karen, how you fit it all in. Great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us. When you sit there with your CBI hat on and you look at the horrors of what's unfolding in Ukraine, and then you read what is happening on the energy price front for ordinary folk here at home, how pessimistic do you get?
It's an absolutely tragic situation. I think all of us just watching this horror unfold in front of our eyes is just so awful, so sad. And I remember very clearly the 24th of February when the war started. And I look back to last April, May, when India had this awful COVID crisis, where the second wave in India, where there were sadly so many people dying, running out of oxygen. And we, my team at the CBI and I, worked with the Indian High Commissioner and the Indian government. And our companies just came to the fore, unhesitatingly, straight away. And we were able to help out and save lives. And it worked. And when this happened on the 24th of February, I said, we can't just sit back and watch this happen. Yes, sanctions, absolutely. We get behind sanctions totally. Yes, the government helping the Ukrainians in every way they can, arming them, having trained them. All that has to happen. What can business do? And I got a message that Vodafone, one of our members, was starting to give free phone calls to anyone in Ukraine. And I said, let's do it again. Let's get in touch with the Ukrainian ambassador who I'd met before. I got in touch with him over the weekend. Had an emergency meeting on Monday. Last Tuesday, with 24 hours notice, I convened an emergency CBI President's Committee meeting, Chairs Committee meeting, Trade Association meeting, Ukraine Ambassador and I sitting in Holland Park in the embassy. In less than 24 hours, 75 of the who's who, captains of industry, turned up. And we said, this is the help that we need. Can you help? If I tell you, Alistair, the help that it is amazing. BP giving free fuel, Shell giving free fuel, Scottish Power giving generators, sending generators of there. They said we need ration packs. We dispatched this week 40,000, the first lorry loads of ration packs that have been sent out there. I mean, I could give you example after example. Rolls-Royce saying we'll give you generators, we'll send generators across to help out. So without hesitating, British business has come to the fore. And that's what we're doing. And every day I get more and more messages coming. This is what we can do. This is what we're sending across. That's the spirit. That's what we're doing. Quite apart from money. Companies are giving millions of pounds of money as well. So this is, I think, where we can not just sit back, but work at it.
I totally agree. And earlier on in the programme, I was talking to a friend of mine in the equestrian sport industry, and even at their level, they are doing their bit using horse boxes to get stuff out there and hopefully bring back refugees as well. But taking a step back from it, Karen, the other thing that we've talked about with our mutual friend Damien Green, former Deputy Prime Minister, voices from think tanks and the rest of it, is do you fear, as a human being, that we've written Ukraine off? Street fighting, trench warfare is not going to see off the superpower that is Russia. However much your members help in the short term, long term, Ukraine has been knotted through tragically.
Not at all. I was in Parliament on that historic day this week. It's never happened before. The only time we have a joint session of Parliament is when Her Majesty the Queen comes for the Queen's speech and the Commons are summoned to us in the House of Lords and the Queen addresses both Houses of Parliament. This time, we went from the House of Lords to the House of Commons and we sat in the galleries, including the public gallery. were full of peers, and both houses were addressed by President Zelensky. We gave him a standing ovation even before he started speaking. We gave him a standing ovation after he finished speaking. We're not allowed to clap, let alone stand and clap. It was one of the most emotional moments that any of us, any parliamentarian, would ever have experienced. And that's when he very clearly said that he's not going to give up. And that's when he quoted Shakespeare and said, is it to be or not to be? It has to be to be. And so we are 100% behind helping Ukraine in every way that we can. Of course, we're very wary and very careful about the escalation going further and triggering what people would refer to as World War III. But we're doing everything that we can. And it's, in a way, united Europe. It's united NATO. You've got countries like Finland and Sweden now wanting to join NATO. I mean, look at how this has backfired for Putin, where Finland has a border 1,400 kilometers with Russia. And if they join NATO now, you've got NATO right at Russia's border in a much bigger way in area. So we are standing united as a world. There's no way Ukraine has been written off. We are going to do everything we can, the business community, this country, the global community, to help Ukraine.
OK, thank you for that. Very, very thoughtful. And I didn't interrupt because I wanted to hear the whole argument. You know, the team told you that we were talking about Ukraine, which we've just done, but also talking about the energy crisis. An old friend of mine, Rory McCallion, who writes about the prospects of industry, particularly manufacturing. And he said last year was better than we'd expected, and this year stands every chance of being pretty good as well, unless the war in Ukraine disrupts trade so much and the energy crisis is not addressed by Her Majesty's government. People simply won't have the confidence or the cash to get out there and give the demand that your members need to build the economy. Is he right or wrong?
The reality is this, that if you go back to May last year, when I chaired the B7 before the G7 that we hosted in the UK in June, the chief economist of the IMF said you're going to have a bounce-back V-shaped recovery. You've put £400 billion in rescuing your business's economy and jobs. You've got a great vaccination program. You're going to bounce back. Well, the reality is since then we've had anything but a bounce back. We've had what I would refer to as a very fragile recovery with one issue after another. Well, before Ukraine. So if you remember, we had those queues at the petrol pumps. Then we had the energy crisis start last summer. Then we had labor shortages. Then we had inflation starting to rear its head. Oh, inflation's going to go to 3%, it's going to go to 4%. Now inflation's going to go to minimum 8%. In much of my supply chain and my own business in Cobra Beer, we've had costs increase by 25%. We've had freight costs increase by 10 times. So inflation is rampant now. Then you've got interest rates creeping up as well. So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And on top of that, the highest tax burden in 70 years. This is the worst time to put up taxes. It's never a good time to put up taxes. But to put up taxes to its highest level in 70 years, when we've just come out of a pandemic, businesses have suffered so much, we've been down on our knees, we want to recover. You don't want to stifle the recovery by putting up taxes. So I've been saying to the Chancellor for a long time, going back to a year ago with the budget, do not put up taxes. What's happening? It's one tax after another going up. Some good news, the super deduction, 130% encouraging companies to invest for growth is perfect. What's happening? Next year, that super deduction is being taken away and corporation tax is going up from 19% to 25%. Next month, national insurance is going up from 1.25% for individuals, the employees and the employers, let alone the energy costs that have just escalated.
Sure.
And fuel poverty, heating. So the consumer squeezed, businesses are being squeezed, we're stuck in a rock and a hard place. We need to generate investment and growth. How do we generate investment and growth? That's the key, because that's going to save this economy, not putting up taxes.
But also, what's intriguing in that analysis, and I put a lot of that to Damien Green, and he said, no, we've got to hold our position on national insurance because borrowing has to be contained, debt has to be contained. The simple fact of the matter is, my view is that this is a government, a Conservative government, that is driving the demand side into the ground with higher taxes and not doing enough about costs like energy. And the supply side, you guys, Rory McCallion, the rest of industry, are holding their hands up in shock and surprise from a Tory government.
So can I say this? I am all for being fiscally conservative, fiscally prudent, and balancing books. I mean, we in business, you have to do that. But also, you've got to be realistic. Let's look at this situation. We don't want to borrow more. Well, what did we do in the pandemic? The government had to spend £400 billion. In absolute terms, per capita terms, that's one of the highest in the world. It didn't have the money to do that. It had to borrow. Borrowing has gone up to 100% of GDP. This was the worst global crisis, the pandemic, since the Second World War. What happened to borrowing at the end of the Second World War? It went up to 250% of GDP. It took until the early 1960s for it to come down to 100% and then further after that. Needs must. If we need to borrow now, we have to borrow. Let me give you an analogy. I love tennis. If you're playing tennis and you take your backswing and you hit the ball, that's your £400 billion. If you stop there, the ball is going to go into the net. You have to follow through to get the ball over the net. That follow through may require another £40 billion. It may require another £100 billion. But you've got to follow through. You can't suddenly say, I don't have the money. Well, you didn't have the money for the £400 billion to start off with. That's illogical to me. You've got to do whatever it takes. And at a time like this, with Ukraine now as well, we have a real crisis with the consumers genuinely suffering. I'm hearing this from our members. We need to do something, and the government's got to move quickly before it is too late.
Well, I'm with you absolutely on that. Let me add another dimension and see if I can tempt you to equal clarity, and I have a feeling I might be able to. On energy, is it time to back off net zero for now so that industry, which faces those costs just as much as individual consumers do, back off for now and return to it in better economic times?
There is no question that we have to get to net zero, and we've as a country been ahead of the game. We've legislated for it. We've set targets in terms of years that we want to get to it. That is a destination we have to get to. But there's always going to be a challenge of the transition to get there. And that transition to get there means innovation and technology more than anything else. We've done brilliantly with wind power. We've done now doing amazing things with hydrogen. We've neglected our nuclear power. That has been shocking, the way we've neglected our nuclear power. Country and our neighbouring country, France, almost 80% of their energy is nuclear. We are way, way down. The idea of Rolls-Royce, for example, and their small modular reactors, each one can power the city the size of Sheffield. That's what we've got to focus on. Hydrogen, having our homes heated by green hydrogen is round the corner. Within a decade, one of our CBI members, Sedent, is doing work on this already in the northeast of England. That's going to be the solution. So let's invest in I'm the Chancellor of the University of Birmingham. At COP26, I'm so proud to say, developed by the University of Birmingham, we had the world's first retrofitted hydrogen-powered train in partnership with the rolling stock company Porterbrook, in partnership with 30 companies like Siemens, in partnership with the UK government, Innovate UK helping us, academia, government, business, working together on a world first. That's the future. That's what we've got to focus on.
Fascinating. Final question, and you lead into it beautifully by mentioning Birmingham University, but I'm talking about education generally. A predecessor of yours at the CBI, I think it may have been Digby, said years ago, the greatest single challenge that he saw was children leaving our schools who still cannot read or write. It is appalling that remains the case now in the 21st century, made worse by the pandemic. Bob Halfon was out saying, come on, sort it out, sort it out. How important is that to you as the current boss of the CBI?
The key to anything is having education from a very young age. And do you know something? I spoke just recently during the pandemic to celebrate the 150th anniversary of state education. Our oldest public schools, private schools, go back to the 7th century. And yet you did not have state education until as recently as 150. And the age was 14. Then it went up to 16. 18-year-olds having the right to education until the age of 18 is only very recently. People don't realize this. And to me, the right to education is a human right. It is the most important thing. To encourage our children from a young age to have the confidence to be creative and innovative. We're a wonderful country. We have this amazing power of creativity. Just imagine if we enable it even more. And our schools, look at the gap. To the cost of educating a state school child is £5,000 a year. You send a child to a top private school, which is only 7% of our children, £50,000 a year. Money. I think we need to put more money behind it. Our universities are the best in the world along with America. They're phenomenal. 1% of the world's population, we produce 14% of the world's leading research papers. We are brilliant. We've won more Nobel Prizes at Cambridge University than any other university in the world. But yet we underfund our universities. We do not invest enough in research and development and innovation. 1.7% of GDP. America, Germany, 3.1% of GDP. If we spend that extra 1%, 20 billion pounds more a year in R&D and innovation, just imagine how much better we could do. This country's got phenomenal potential, and education is absolutely the key.
Got you loud and clear on tax and on energy and on government looking at what individual voters want as well as business. I've now got you loud and clear on education, and I'm hoping that you'll come back because there's one other bit I'd like to talk to you about, because I know you do it a lot yourself, and that is the role of philanthropy in broadening educational opportunity as well. But let's book that for another time, Karen, and thank you very much indeed for finding time for us this Saturday here on GB News. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you, as it always is. What a great guy. Karen Bilimoria, life peer and University Chancellor, as he just told us, but also founder of Cobra Beer. Now, let's get some more of your thoughts before we leave you this Saturday afternoon. And I'm going to start off with Helen. Yes, I think the team have got that. Yes, they have. Brilliant. We're more than happy to welcome all Ukrainians fleeing from this war, provided they're actually the genuine refugees. The real issue is that we're already overrun with illegal immigrants who have filled our hotels. We need to get tough and deport them all immediately so that we have the space and the money to help the Ukrainians who are genuine refugees. It's a contentious point, Helen, but you speak for many people who've been in touch with us. Brian joins the argument and says, just tell Russia straight that this wouldn't be tolerated, and the NATO will have to intervene, firstly by introducing no-fly zone over the Ukraine, then by air attacks on Russian troops on the ground. Brian, that's a perfect definition of what Joe Biden warned about last night, the Third World War. Let's go to Tim now. Putin has the green light from Biden to grab all he can in the next 3 years. Arguably, this time limit before a potentially stronger President of the United States will encourage more brutality. It does, however, prove that nuclear weapons deter more than just nuclear war. Really interesting, Tim, and thank you for that. I've got time, I think, for two more, yes? Daniel, if Biden was not president, he wouldn't be doing this. Basic Biden's given Putin a blank cheque. I fear you may well be on the money there, Daniel. And finally, Walter, if Putin succeeds, Biden will go down in history as the president under whom the West was lost. That is how high the stakes are. Well, goodness gracious me. Thank you all very, very much indeed for all of those thoughts and for the many, many more that came piling in that we didn't have time for, because that is all that we have time for today. I'll be back at midday tomorrow, where we'll be discussing the latest developments in the Ukrainian crisis, but also the effect that it's having on the sporting industry. I hope very much indeed that you'll be able to find time to join me tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. A very goodbye to me.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells and scattered showers, although turning windy in the southwest. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be turning increasingly windy across southwest England, with gales or severe gales around coastal areas. A band of rain, heavy at times, will move eastwards through the afternoon. In contrast, the southeast will be mostly dry with sunny spells. The winds will freshen this afternoon, but it will feel pleasant in the sunshine. It'll initially be dry across Wales, but outbreaks of rain will arrive across Pembrokeshire through the afternoon. Winds will also increase, especially in the south. The northwest of England will be mostly dry, although the odd blustery shower is possible this afternoon. There'll be plenty of sunny spells too. There'll also